Hi, I'm John,
I'm Pete.
and this is the Fishstolian.
So welcome back, Fishstolians. It's late May. It's a Monday morning. It's about 6:10. I'm about to head off and pick up Pete, and we're going up to the Bristol Frome. That's a river that runs into the east of Bristol. It's probably the major, certainly in Bristol, it's the major tributary of the Avon. And we know there's some trout in there. There's on the web, there's certainly some reports of trout. There's also a mayfly hatch there, which is unusual for this area. And the mayfly is basically a big food festival for trout. These bigger than average flies, mayflies that hatch off for a day, mate, and then die. The fish really lock onto them and sort of gorge themselves. So generally later in the day, that's not an option for us today. So we're going to go out early before work and see if we can find some trout there. And it could be good. Could be interesting. We were going to go at around June the 10th because researchers suggested that's when the hatch was. But actually reports of the mayfly are already coming off. So we brought that forward and we're going to go and take a look now. So we've arrived at Snuff Mills. Pete reckons he's just heard a black cap, which is I was going to say a good spot, but a good hear. Good start to the morning. So Snuff Mills, obviously I've always thought that Snuff Mills referred to milling snuff. But actually the mills along this river milled corn on the whole. And the reason this is called Snuff Mills is one of the millers was nicknamed Snuffy Jack because he constantly had snuff down his miller's frock. The millers wear miller's apron. Anyway,
From sniffing it.
from sniffing snuff.
Yeah.
Sniffing snuff, yeah.
Presumably that was milled elsewhere in Bristol, but it's interesting, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so here we are anyway. We've got the river just down on our right. It's come all the way in from the edge of the Cotswolds, down through Old Sodbury, Chipping Sodbury, Frampton Cotterell, Winterbourne, Hambrook, under the motorway, under the ring road, into Frenchay, and then down into this area, which I think is Stapleton, isn't it, Pete? Right thereabouts.
Yeah, thereabouts.
And it's looking good. There's a reasonable height there.
Yeah. So it's come under a couple of motorway bridges.
Yep.
We're right in town now. This is full-on suburbia. And it goes down into the middle of town, where ultimately disappears into culverts.
That's right, yeah. In fact, on my cycle route in to my office, which is down near Broadmead, I passed the last bit of the Frome, which goes through a place called Riverside Park, which is the most kind of urban park you could possibly get. It's big high walls, it's been kind of culverted and directed in various ways, graffiti everywhere, running through industrial parks, but absolutely stunning. There's moorhens, kingfishers, some lovely flowing weed and big shoals of chub. It was a real delight this time of year just to stop and take a look over the wall and just stop for a few minutes and absorb that before work. But we're a bit further upstream here. We were going to come mid-June, I think I said earlier in the intro, but we've heard the mayfly are up. We're a bit early in the day, but we're going to give it a go anyway and see if any fish are looking up. So we're just down, we've got to the riverside. There's all the way up through here there's weirs because there was mills, which is not good for fish migration, but it's created some interesting features. There's a little kind of mill stream running through here, which looks like it could hold some trout. To a mallard paddling around just below us there. And apparently there's a species of tree which is fairly unusual around here called a service tree. Well, do we know what we were looking for?
Yeah.
Can you describe one?
Off the top of my head, no.
Okay, a bit tree-like.
Yeah, no, it's got flowers. I think the flowers are a bit white beam like. I think I'd know it when I saw it.
Okay, well, if you see one, give us a shout.
My botany knowledge getting me down there.
However, we both know what a dipper looks like, and there's a good chance of seeing a dipper. That'd be really exciting. Only seen those a couple of times on my local stream. And always the chance of a kingfisher down here, or even a pair of kingfishers, so that'd be really good.
We were on the trim a few weeks ago. Since then, somebody has seen perched on a log next to one another 4 kingfishers.
Wow, that's got to be a record.
It must have been a pair that had just fledged their nest, because they're very, very territorial. So you might occasionally see 2, which is a matched up pair, but 4, never. So that was a brilliant spot from the person who saw it.
So do you think that was the parents and the fledglings
Yes.
sort of on a initial trip out? Wow,
Absolutely.
That's fantastic. Well, it'd be great to see anything near like approaching that today, but we'll see what pops up.
So on the weir, and it's a big old weir. I mean, my goodness, it's got to be 7 foot from the bottom to the lip. Walking along the top of the weir is a nice grey wagtail. So that's one of the birds we were wondering we might see, and there he is. So John's trying to work his way to find some steps down to the water at the bottom of this weir. Nothing showing on the surface, not yet anyway, so I can see he's now unstringing his rod. First cast away. So fish in the Frome, meant to be a really quite healthy population of coarse fish, chub, roach, dace, a few carp, even some pike. I'm not sure they're as big as they once were on average, but quite a variety. And then there are also reports of trout. So we'll find out. I'm just hooked up probably on a branch or something on the bottom. Fooled me. I was wrong. It was an on-off. He lost it. So he's working his way up to the head of the pool now, the weir pool, where the water really is rushing in. Nice and oxygenated. Pretty deep too, by the looks of it. It's got to be where he's landing his flies, 3 or 4 feet, I'd have thought. There's a good one, John was saying, the one he lost. Took him by surprise. So he wasn't ready. We're leaving the weir pool for a little bit now, just to quieten down again. John reckons the fish he turned, he saw it. Whatever it was at least 1.5 pounds. So, decent fish.
So it's looking like, really, we could have predicted this. It's a bit early for fly hatches. We can actually see our breath, even though it's almost June. It's just a bit of a cold snap at the minute, which isn't encouraging the flies to hatch. So, as Pete already said, I just lost one. I saw it turn in the water on my fly.
Do you know what it was, John?
I was a brownie without a doubt, and it was a good one. It was at least 1.5 pounds. But it was such a surprise. I just wasn't ready for it. Too much slack line. By the time I tightened up properly, it was away. So good for him. But we're gonna probably concentrate until it warms up a bit. If this sun can break through, we might see some flies coming off. That would be great, because it's lovely looking dry flow water.
I've just crossed a major weir. This is another. Oh, this one must be, I should think, 8 feet, possibly even more. I think John mentioned the fall of the river between Frenchare and Stapleton is something like 50 feet, and I can well believe it. So in a massive, very deep pool above the weir, what I thought were rises are actually bubbles coming up and breaking the surface. Could just be vegetation breaking down at the bottom, or could be showing some fish. Probably is actually. Snuffling about, rooting around in the bottom. I do love some of the British wildlife names. Just in front of me, growing on a log that has fallen into the weir pool, is a very fine stand of figwort. Who knows how it got that name? It's a characteristic plant, very square stem, looks nothing like a fig at all. Well, I haven't seen a service tree, but there are an abundance of hemlock water dropwort plants, which are the most poisonous in Britain. Very common. They like their roots right down in the water. It's right, real marginal. Quite a handsome plant, really, but great care needed.
So we're just strolling through the park. We've had a quick chat with one of the dog walkers who's given us a few fishing tips.
There's some balsam.
Okay, and we've...
I was just saying to John, I haven't seen any balsam all morning.
There we are, first invasive species, and worryingly, Pete found some Japanese knotweed yesterday on the trim, so constantly got our eye out for that.
Yeah,
for those...
I'll report that to the council now. I'll do that today.
These various sort of wildlife hazards, invasive species, but it isn't just the invasive species that are a problem. This river is quite closely monitored by BART, Bristol Avon Rivers Trust. In fact, once a year there's an initiative called Water Blitz, which is now renamed River Blitz. Every sample taken from this river showed a very high phosphate level, which means basically it's got a lot of sewage in it, and you can see that by looking at the stones and the rocks on the riverbed. They're all coated with algae, kind of brown sludge, which is such a shame because it would be absolutely stunning, without that. It's still lovely as it is, but it's just knowing that all those pollutants are getting in there is, a little bit depressing, really. However, it's a sunny day. We know there's fish in the river because one of them's taken a look at my fly. And do you know what? I'm still feeling optimistic, Pete.
Yeah, I think so. Right, okay, talking about Water Blitz then, John, did you manage to catch up with George from BART?
I did, actually. Okay, so I've come to another one of Bristol's lovely green spaces. This is Cotton Lawn Park. There's not actually a river here, but there's one not very far away. Well, I say a river. There's a tiny little brook called the Cranbrook. Anyone who knows Cranbrook Road probably register that. There's also one not too far away called the Hallfield Brook that runs from this sort of north end of Bristol right down into town, joins up with the Bristol Frome. So we can't see a stream, but we know that they're nearby. And I've come here with George Clark. George is from an organisation called Bristol Avon Rivers Trust, or BART for short. And the Fishstolians are big fans of BART because they do some amazing work in the rivers of Bristol and beyond, sort of the catchment of the Bristol Avon. So that goes out quite a long way, right over into Wiltshire and up into the Cotswolds and further down to Somerset. And so George is here, and I'm just going to take the opportunity to get him to tell us a little bit about BART.
Brilliant, yeah, I can do. So, as you say, Bristol Avon Rivers Trust, BART for short. We're essentially an organisation based in the Bristol Avon catchment, so that's sort of South Gloucestershire, North Somerset, Wiltshire, the cities of Bristol and Bath, and all of the tributaries and streams that run into the Bristol Avon. And our sort of sole purpose is to provide a kind of voice for our rivers, a voice for the rivers of the catchment, to protect and enhance our freshwater environments and the kind of wider natural landscapes, enhance and protect them for the benefit of wildlife and for people.
That's great. So how did that kind of come about? I mean, we know that the Environment Agency has been struggling for quite a long time with a lack of resources. Did it come directly out of that? Was BART already doing stuff before the Environment Agency started sort of struggling in that way?
Well, we've just turned 10 years old, so we were set up 10 years ago exactly by 3 local anglers actually, who sort of noticing, as many anglers particularly have noticed, the decline and deterioration in the health of our rivers, the kind of decline in populations of fish, and also the decline in the amount of monitoring that's been done around those. So you talk about the Environment Agency. We need people on the ground actually finding out what those issues are. But these local anglers kind of noticed this issue and saw what the wider Rivers Trust were doing nationally and realised that there wasn't a Rivers Trust in the Bristol Avon catchment. So felt they needed to do something, felt they needed to set up a local Rivers Trust, and that's exactly what they did. They put their money where their mouth was and set us up. And so for the past 10 years, we've been working kind of on the ground to try and reverse that decline in the state of our rivers.
And so what would that look like? I mean, how would that have started off? You know, what kind of things practically would have Bart started doing, and how's that evolved over these 10 years? What those projects look like?
So, I mean, it's a real sort of variety of projects, from education of school children and of adults to kind of communications and events that try and get local people out to actually see those waterways, which tend to be quite hidden, as you said at the beginning of the podcast. So kind of on a small scale, just connecting communities to their local rivers to inspire change and to inspire guardianship of those environments. It's then evolved to engaging multiple larger stakeholders and partners, such as local councils and authorities, water companies, the Environment Agency, those kinds of partners as well, to actually create large-scale and catchment-wide projects. So on the ground, that looks like restoration work, so getting into the river, getting our hands dirty, our feet wet, to install brushwood berms, create sort of fish habitat. To improve flow diversity, we've planted thousands of trees on our riverbanks and up on the slopes to try and slow the flow of water through our catchment. We've addressed just a few of the many hundreds of weirs and barriers to fish passage within the catchment as well. We've worked with farmers and landowners.
I was going to say, there's quite a large element of your work's diplomatic, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We need to engage sort of everyone and anyone to our work, because there isn't really a stakeholder that isn't impacted, I suppose, or doesn't impact our waterways. So anything that happens upstream impacts those communities downstream as well. So we work with particularly farming communities up in the headwaters of our rivers and streams to try and reduce their impacts, try and advise on land and river management as well.
How specifically, what kind of things would you be trying to get farmers to change or to do?
Yeah, so I mean, we obviously try and look at where the issues are, and try and develop the projects around that. But they involve things such as planting cover crops over the winter for arable farmers, to try and reduce the amount of runoff coming off the fields and to improve soil stability. It could be infrastructure changes, so improving yards and trying to reduce the amount of slurry and those kinds of things that are heading into polluting our waterways. Giving rivers sort of room to breathe through farmland as well. So it could be really quick wins, things such as fencing off our waterways from livestock to prevent poaching and erosion by cattle and by sheep. It could be installing water troughs away from the rivers. All sorts of things that can be done with the support of kind of other partners as well. But it's also about creating behaviour change as well to quite an ingrained system, I suppose, all for the benefit of our waterways and of the resource that they themselves are also dependent on as well.
It's something that we all tend to take a little bit for granted, isn't it? I mean, we said in our previous podcast, I think we were talking about the foxes and the badgers, and people are very aware and fond of them in Bristol, but don't necessarily think about what's below the waterline. Yet so much of the rest of the ecosystem relies on things that are in the river.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's obviously all connected, but rivers are, it's quite a common phrase that rivers are sort of the lifeblood and the arteries of our ecosystems and environments, and the tiny creatures at the bottom of our rivers are food for the larger ones that swim around and that fly around, and food for us obviously as well. They provide a livelihood for those farmers and for all sorts of recreational uses and all of those kinds of things.
So the Fishstolian is obviously what we're about, is trying to get people to, fall in love with their local river, basically, somewhere they may take their dog for a walk next to, which they kind of, they enjoy that environment, but just take it to the next level by being able to notice what's going on there, what creatures they're going to see there, keeping an eye out for the local kingfisher or whatever. And also, looking out for its well-being. So if they see signs of a pollution incident, to report that and that kind of thing. So what is it that people can do with BART, that they can actually get stuck in, they can get their wellies on, they can start turning over stones, or what kind of activities can you offer that will get people involved in their local river?
Yeah, so we're very dependent on volunteers. We certainly wouldn't be able to cover anywhere near as much of the catchment as a fairly small team without the support of volunteers. So all sorts of volunteering opportunities, from regular low commitment opportunities such as becoming a BART beacon, who are our kind of eyes and ears on the ground, like you just mentioned, reporting signs of pollution. But our beacons kind of go the next step, where we ask them to let us know if they support anything good or bad with their local river. And they're almost guardians of their local stretch. So if you sign up as a BART beacon, you can keep us updated on things that are going on the watercourse, and we can help you to then convert that into action. We have regular volunteering opportunities. We need people to plant trees for us over the winter, or with us over the winter, to get involved actually in the stream, installing those kind of brushwood berms with us, doing all sorts of exciting and sort of much needed practical restoration work in the river as well. And then our kind of flagship project and flagship event that we need volunteers for is our River Blitz project. So the Bristol Avon River Blitz runs over a weekend every July. It's a citizen science project that needs we ask hundreds of people to get out to their local river, make a number of observations about the health of the wider ecosystem and about the channel and the vegetation and the wildlife that they're seeing, and also to take water quality samples as well. So we provide volunteers with the kind of equipment to go out, take their water sample, test the amount of nutrients, nitrates and phosphates, which are key sort of indicators of river health, and then to report those back to us over that during that event. And that helps us and our partners to kind of direct our conservation work to see where those kind of good areas and bad areas of water quality are. And anyone and everyone can get involved. So we want as many people to do that for us as possible. So in order to do that, all you need to do is go to the BART website and have a look at the data from the previous years, and also sign up. You'll find out information on when the next event is. So head to bristolavonriverstrust.org/riverblitz, and all the information is there.
And we'll also put a link to that on our link tree on our Instagram page at the Fishstolian. So George, just want to say a massive thank you for coming and telling us all about that. It's great. Big thank you to BART as well for everything you've done. Pete and I have experienced it firsthand. The club that we fish at just outside of Bristol actually, but a whole new stretch of that was kind of reinvigorated. Dog just coming past here. Reinvigorated with some berms that were put in to speed up the flow and clean up the gravels. And come this winter and last winter, I'm sure the trout are really grateful for having some great new spawning beds there. So thank you, George, and thank you, Bart.
Thank you.
So having chucked the contents of my fly box at the last weir that we came to, which did take a little bit of manoeuvring. It was quite a tasty jump across the sluice gate to negotiate. That yielded nothing. We've just come up to a nice streamy bit of water, with a little kind of natural weir at the head, and a neck, bubbly fast water underneath a big sycamore tree. Just see a little propeller seed starting to form here. And quite a tricky cast. There's an awful lot of low hanging boughs, but Pete's in now with his dry fly. Slightly more refined way of fishing, to dragging a huge bait fish imitation through the bubbles on the weir, but let's see if it works. So Pete's just manoeuvred himself down probably a 40 foot, maybe 35 foot bank. There's a high path up there with a railing, and you can see why there's a railing there, because it's a big drop. But I was looking around for him, wondering whether or not he'd come a cropper, and I looked down and he was down by the river, so he's somehow skirted down, probably on his backside. He's got down and he's on a lovely position here, just below another one of these weirs. There's a little sluice gate that I'm sat on now. I've followed him down, and see he's putting on a dry fly. There's a tree just in front of him, looks like a beech tree, overhanging the water, and a couple of streamy bubbles, lines of bubbles coming in over a nice deep pool. There's got to be a trout in this pool. I mean, it just looks absolutely perfect. I'll take a picture and stick it on our Instagram, but come on, Pete, work your magic. So we've just seen our first sort of bona fide trout rise, a really good confident rise, on a classic bit of water where it's quite shallow on this near bank, but then drops off towards the far bank into some deeper water under a tree. It just looks absolutely perfect. So Pete's popped in to try and cover it, see if it will look up at his fly. No response so far, but fingers crossed.
Right, a little bit of interest in some mayflies we've seen hatching off and scuttering on the surface, to the extent that we saw about 4 or 5 mayflies hatch, and I don't think any of them survived. The fish had the lot. So John is just now going to cover them with a properly designed mayfly pattern. I was using just a fair size parachute dry fly, but this is a proper mayfly, so we'll see if they come up and take note. Dog in the pool below us. Sounds as though it's going to come through in a minute, so John probably hasn't got long to fish. Right, John's put on his humongous mayfly pattern. Now I can see it easily standing out against the green of the other bank. I think he's working on the principle, give it something worth making a rise for. Floating down through the pool. And he's in. Oh, lovely take. It's a good fish. Oh, it's an absolutely lovely take. Just came up. Oh, nice fish. Jumping across the pool. John's following it. Keeping his rod nice and high. Getting his net out. Yeah, he's playing it quite hard. Yeah, we don't want to stress the fish. We want to put it back. Oh, yeah, that's a blinder. Another big leap into the air. God, I'd seen that mayfly 7 or 8 times, then came up and took it. Here, John's right down on one knee now. Lovely bit of fishing action. Well, to me, that looks like a trout. No other species would be jumping around like that. So I think we have caught, famous last words, our Frome brownie. Oh, it's still not coming in. It really is putting up a good scrap, this thing. Oh, smashing the surface. Here he comes now. And in the net. Oh, blinding. John, how does that feel?
Oh, mate, I can't believe it. Well, let's get it.
Look at that.
I reckon that must be about £1.25, £1.50.
Yeah, lovely fish.
Oh, my word. I didn't think it was going to come up.
No,
That was literally, I was going to say, last cast to you then.
You must have covered it at least half a dozen times, probably more.
And then, did you see it turn in the water and take the flight?
Yes.
Absolutely brilliant. Well, I'm just going to get this one, take a couple of pictures and get it back.
Excellent.
So heading back to the car park now, mission accomplished. Can't believe that. Pete spotted the rise. Unfortunately, I think maybe his fly just wasn't quite big enough. Had a lovely looking parachute fly on, but looks like they were locked onto mayflies because as Pete described, a flurry came down and there was a nice rise. But I'm absolutely delighted that we've managed to get one. We set our mission to come out and find a brown trout in a Bristol stream. We knew they were here, but we've actually got one, and we got one on a mayfly. So that's a first for either of us, isn't it, mate?
Yeah, it is. Oh, classic. Brilliant fishing, John.
Well, I don't know about that. It could have been either of us, but we see these trips as a bit of a team effort, and we got there in the end. So,
yeah. As with the trim, the river, you look at it and it's full of weirs. And as you said, it had been, there's pollution and it's far from ideal, but nature is making a good fist of it.
So back home and absolutely buzzing after catching that beautiful brown trout. And all I've got to do now is just say thank you so much to everyone who helped us produce this podcast. To Jack Ogborn, who took our snippets of recordings and knitted them together into this podcast. To Bingo Fury for lending us their latest single, Birchall and Kings, to use as our theme tune. To Danny Jenkins for his brilliant design and expertise, pulling together our visual ident for us. To Pete Tigers for being our kind of mentor in podcasting and helping us with all the techie stuff and also hosting our podcast. And to you for listening. Thank you so much. And please come on our last trip with us next week where we go night fishing. I won't say any more, but it's going to be exciting.